Merhabalar, hoş geldiniz, şeref verdiniz. Hızlıca başlayacağız çünkü malumunuz olduğu üzere bir gecikme söz konusu. Gecikmeden dolayı da çok değerli bir panelist heyetimiz var bugün. Ben kısaca kendilerini takdim edeceğim. Bu süreden de çalmamak için kendilerinden de istirham ediyorum. Yaklaşık 8 dakikalık sunumları tamamladıktan sonra sırasıyla
presentations in 8 minutes. They can continue to have Q&A at the end. We have a really important topic today. It is one of the most sensitive topics in the world. As you might be familiar, the refugee topic is crucial for both the world and Turkey. It gains more importance day by day. Inside this topic, there is another issue that is quite vulnerable as well. It is employment and unemployment. Mainly, we see the latter. We all know what unemployment might cause. We see this in our republic, in our region, and in the world. That's why, regionally and locally, how this issue is resolved will be told by our panelists today. Since we have many panelists speaking English, I will continue speaking in English. I would like to welcome everyone again and the participants. Because of the delay, we have another obstacle. Mr. Adnan has to leave a little bit earlier. That's why we will start with him. We will listen to him and then we will say goodbye to him. The floor is yours. Thank you. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to salute you on behalf of myself and the Chamber of Industry in Gaziantep. Before starting my speech, I should tell you that I should leave early and I would like you to excuse me. I hope that this panel and this speech will be fruitful and beneficial for both our country, the refugees, and the industry people in our region. In 2011, all of a sudden, we had an influx of migrants from Syria with whom we share the longest border. Gaziantep, the city used to have 2 million of population and then it had 2.5 million. We had a 26% of a population increase. Is this bearable? In many European cities, we don't have this number of refugees. 550,000 people came to the city and we should be living together with them. We were not to tell them go back because it wouldn't suit us. We are a society that does not sleep well fed when the neighbor is hungry. We had to help them if we could. Creating jobs and ensuring that they live in dignity in our city were among our principles. Building on that, in 2011, with this influx of migrants, we formed GESOME, which means Chamber of Industry in Gaziantep job creation courses. With our organized industrial region, we had this work and you can see it on the screen. We are having vocational courses there. The local labor and the external people coming from Syria were benefiting from these centers, this center. We trained more than 6,000 people. UNDP, FAO, ILO were among our partners in these trainings. People who were trained later were employed in our businesses. More than 6,000 people and 30% of them are employed right now. This center is of course has a different value for both us and Turkey. It's a role model. We try to establish a similar center in Adana. We are in contact with the industry of a chamber of industry in Adana. We might have overlooked some things and we have realized them later on. We try to do it better right now, and we are in this partnership with Chamber of Industry in Adana. What else do we do in this center? We give the vocational courses, and people who will be employed in dangerous industries. We formed a network where we certify them in terms of occupational proficiency. That's how they get priority when they are to employ. We can give 15 institutions these certificates. Also, the high school students are trained in the same center. We are working on the mentality that people are trained when they are young. That's why we are focusing on high school students. Also, 50% of our country are women. Also, we have women coming from Syria. What did we do for them? Yesterday, we had the motto of no to violence against women. This was the day yesterday. We established the Women Entrepreneurship Center. Both from the locals and the Syrian women, we formed an incubation center. We train them vocationally, and they can bring their entrepreneur ideas to this center. In 1 or 1.5 years, they are also employed. As women, they can sustain their lives standing on their feet. That's where we get to help them. Of course, with all this work, what we aim is social cohesion and social peace. We know that if a person is well fed and they have someone to depend on, something to depend on, there is no problem. The first objective for us is this notion. The UN and other organizations help us. We want to thank them before you. I hope we will come together in different occasions and have good time. I would like to say one last thing. Our friends that were trained here and our refugee siblings might work in different places. Of course, Gaziantep is an industrial city with $7 billion of exports, and it is increasing. We can employ people to a certain extent. How can we employ more? Or how can we produce products with more added value? We formed technology transfer offices. We are trying to produce products with more added value and create jobs for more people. That's why we do all this work. I should mention something before continuing. Gaziantep and Kilis have a organized industry region to be formed. It will be of 45 million kilometer squares, and it will be connected to Alexandria harbor. With this road, Gaziantep industrial region will be connected, and the distance will be less than 90 kilometers. Right now it is 220 kilometers, and it will reduce to 87 kilometers. It will be closer to the port, to the harbor, and the international investors will probably be interested in the region. If the international investors come and these businessmen that were distributed all around the world might establish businesses, and they can employ all these people together. I wanted to do this small piece of advertisement with your help. The restructuring of Syria, the reviving of Syria are among the topics that we want to facilitate. Please do not ignore this region if you want to accomplish this aim. Thank you. This is an announcement to the businessmen in the hall. This might be seen as an announcement, a call to the businessmen. Gaziantep is a leading industrial region. It is quite good for investment. It is not a coincidence that we have this convention in Gaziantep. You have a genuine approach to the refugees, and also you're a really successful businessman. The UN gathered gathered people in Gaziantep because of this. We don't want to take much of your time, and we would like to say goodbye to you. I'm sorry again. I hope that it's a fruitful and beneficial gathering for everyone. Right now I'm switching to English.
Are mostly foreign, non-Turkish. We heard of Adnan Bey's speech about how Gaziantep deals with job creation and employment for migrants, refugees. Antep serves as one of the, I think, best examples globally. And this panel, as I pointed out in the very beginning, I hope that this panel can serve as a portfolio of best practices, if you like. And on that note, I'd like to point out that we have speakers from Bosnia-Herzegovina, we have a speaker from Bulgaria, we have a speaker from Australia, we have a distinguished gentleman, business person from the MENA geography, Mr. Khaled. So I think we have quite a rich panel, and the best practices from each country and region will serve, hopefully, feed us with best practices for your own countries, your own institutions, and so forth. Now I move to Mayor Fazlić, and the question I would like to repeat, how did you grapple with this question of job creation? Is this a relevant question for your country or for your region? Maybe that's a better point to start. And what would you suggest, and what kind of opportunities, and how do you create these opportunities for refugees and migrants in your region? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, organizers of this event, of this meeting, because it's a good opportunity to attract attention on this important issue, like migrants and problem which migrants have everywhere, including my country. Just let me explain where am I from. I am the city mayor. It's mayor of Bihac. Bihac is a cantonal capital of Canton 1 in Bosnia. I know you know where Bosnia is. And I said, my friend, that this question of the panel is not applicable for me, and I am a politician, and I said, you can ask whatever you want. I am going to answer what I am ready for. You know, we have been facing migrant crisis for 2 years. It's something what just happened in my city, and I consider this as an earthquake because it just came, and we are not able to prevent this. We have to help people. We have to find a way to survive, and actually situation in my city is issue of surviving from the very beginning. I was participant in one show in my country about migrants, and people consider migrants issue on academic level, on politician level, on scientific level, and I was very furious about this, and I explained that for me, for those people in my city, for my city, my inhabitants of my city, it's not an academic issue, it's not a scientific issue, it's issue of surviving. Let me explain what the question is not applicable for my city, because migrants which 40,000 migrants came in Bosnia, and all of them passed the Bihac, passed Bihac. There is no migrant crisis in Bosnia. There is only migrant crisis in Bihac. And they came not from Syria. Most of them coming from Pakistan and North Africa and not from Syria. And they don't want to stay in Bihac. They don't want to be exploited. They don't want to seek asylum. They just try to get asylum in order to have white paper, to be able to travel to Bosnia, and all this life actually is a game. They call it game. Game means they have been trying to reach European Union. They have been trying to reach Croatia. Bihac is border city on Croatia. To Croatia, Bihac is border city to European Union. And I would like to use this opportunity to explain acting of European Union. I think it's something that you just have to know. European Union, actually, Croatia is a member of European Union, jeopardizes international law. They just don't want to help people which seek international help. They don't want to help people who try to reach European Union. They have beating them. They pushing them back in Bosnia, and the problem for us, for my city, actually is we have been becoming a hotspot of migrant crisis in Bosnia. But we have some benefit. We have so many benefits from migrant crisis, and maybe it could be my answer on your question. So many people in my city. Actually, I think that migrants in my city are currently is the biggest employer, because so many people have got a job thanks to migrants, because so many international organizations, NGOs, European Union, UN agencies, IOM, UNHCR, and other agencies have come in Bihac, opened their offices, employed people, and approximately there are about 500 people which have very good wages. Compare it with domestic people, very good wages. Now, let me conclude this. If you want to be to make conclusion, we can in my city we can consider migrants like a cruiser ship. When the ship just every day, Bihac is a tourist city. Every year, more than 1,000 tourists coming in Bihac. But you can imagine that every day we have 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. It's more than 15% of inhabitants of Bihac. We have every day 5,000 or 6,000 tourists. We have every day 5,000 or 6,000 to 7,000 migrants which spends their own money, and some other people which spend money thanks to them. That's very good thing for Bihac economy. That's very good for entrepreneurs in Bihac, and we have so many benefits from them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we might have some follow-up questions afterwards about the mechanics on how you make this work. From what I understand, the economy is accommodating to ensuring job creation for migrants and refugees in your region. But maybe we could ask further in the follow-up session on how you actually make this sustainable, or how you see this going on into the future. Now we move on to our next speaker, who is perhaps one of the most experienced people in the refugee issue and job creation in the refugee issue, Mr. Khaled Bablli. He is the chairman of the executive board of the Syrian Businessmen Association, and I know from first hand that they're very, very active in Turkey, working with international and local institutions. So we're ready for you, please.
Thank you very much. I will be speaking in Arabic. Please attention. أود أن أشكر كافة
Thank you very much to everyone for their endeavors in organizing this event, especially in terms of the subjects, the forums and conferences on refugees. They are very important because this is a humanitarian issue, and it is at the same time, it shows how much you value refugees and how the hosting countries, how the hosts are actually putting their attaching importance on the issue. At the same time, all mayors, I would like to thank all of them for coming here. You are taking up the first role in caring about these people and their problems and how they should be handled, how they should be managed, these problems should be managed. And also, as the Syrian Businessmen Association, when we came here and found this association, we were not only workers and farmers, we were we were from private sectors, we were doing businesses, we had also doctors and industrial workers. They suffered a lot when they came here first because they had to abandon their occupations, and the host country, fortunately, they actually welcomed us and helped us very much. But at the after the first entry point, we had a lot of difficulties regarding employment and carrying out our jobs. And we wanted to build a bridge between the Syrian businessmen and Turkish business people, and we also wanted to get some experience and acquire some knowledge about how we can actually do our jobs here and bring our businesses or our own occupations here. So we wanted to build that bridge between the Turkish business people and the Syrian business people, and we wanted to be involved with each other's work. Of course, in order to open any kind of factories or businesses, we wanted to be in communication with the government, with the local administration, so that we could actually get them to facilitate our businesses in Turkey as well. And from time to time, our organization, our association held meetings with Turkish business people. We were doing this periodically, and at the same time we wanted to, in order to overcome some problems, some hurdles, we worked together for a long time. Of course, the SMEs, for example, we wanted to plant the idea of SMEs into the minds of the Syrian people as well, because we wanted to let them know that they had some support and they had a way to realize their dreams of owning an SME, for example, and doing their own jobs and getting employed. And we wanted to learn about the market as well, and as Syrians in Turkey, maybe we opened up about 10,000 companies, and the moment, I think we are providing a good opportunity for a lot of people, not only just refugees or Syrian people, but also Turkish people too. We are employing, and by we, I mean the Syrian people who opened up businesses in Turkey. They are doing import and export in Gaziantep, for example. They are doing export from Gaziantep to the whole world. And in 2017, the Chamber of Commerce in Gaziantep announced that 18% of the export of Gaziantep came from these businesses, the Syrian businesses. Of course, this was accomplished by the supports from the Turkish government and the local administration, the municipality, and also the Chamber of Commerce. There was a lot of strength and support coming from, especially from the Chamber of Commerce and the municipalities. So I would like to say that yes, we suffered in the beginning, but now we are trying to reach the whole Middle Eastern region as well. Because when we were in Syria, we were doing business with these people. And now we are trying to bring them to Turkey as well, so that we can actually contribute to the economy of this country too. And at the same time, we want to help our Syrian citizens as well, and we want to, by doing that at the same time, we want to open up some businesses and create employment opportunities for Turkish people as well. So it is a win-win situation. While we are contributing to the Turkish economy, we are also creating jobs and opportunities for a lot of people. Also, we want to increase the opportunities for, especially for newly graduated young people from universities or vocational schools. We have over 1,000 new graduates who are trying to establish their own businesses, and they have their own projects, and we are trying to promote them into carrying out their own projects, and we are trying to support them. And they came up with really good projects, and now they are creating new products, and they are launching them into the market. And this means that we created job opportunities and employment opportunities for new graduates, really young people. We created an electronic network so that they could actually have a communication network between among themselves. And by doing that, we are actually connecting the experts in the area and also the less experienced business people. So this is a really good platform, I think. We also allocated some in Şanlıurfa, for example. We allocated some offices or facilities. We signed a contract with the municipality. We actually allocated 25 pieces of land for industrial use, for building up some or establishing some factories. And we were considering that, and we were calculating how the cost would turn out, and it will be a very good opportunity, I think, in the future for both Syrians and Turkish citizens. And the government and the state is supporting us. And I would like to say that in response to that support, the least we can do is to establish some businesses and some good opportunities for these people. And maybe there are some hurdles along the way. For example, some industries need some certificates and some documentations, and also the equivalence issue between diplomas is an issue, is a big problem. Maybe if we can get over that and do something about it, it would be a great solution.
I think in the Q&A session, Mr. Khaled, I would like to ask you, not now, but in the Q&A session, on some of the biggest challenges that you've seen over the past few years and some of the best solutions. And the reason why I ask this is for our foreign friends to maybe take it and apply it in their respective regions. This is a question for later. And now we move on to Bulgaria. We have again a distinguished speaker, Mayor Petkov, and over here I have a note for you. This is the municipality that actually signed the first integration agreement with resettled refugees from Turkey. And now they're also integrating newly recognized refugees. So I think we have a success story to hear from you. The floor is yours.
Благодаря ви за възможността въобще първо да присъствам на този форум.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here. Compared to the other countries who attend this forum, I think our problems and solutions are really alike. I am the mayor of one of the biggest districts in Sofia, and in our districts we have about 100,000 population, and the basic problem is that in our district, we are in the capital of Bulgaria. The Ministry of Internal Affairs and our municipality, we had an agreement and we are taking in refugees into our district, and my colleagues around our district, they don't have the same approach, but I've heard some of the projects, for example, from other countries, and I heard about the funds and the support, financial support, and other kinds of support from the projects that were developed in other countries. Maybe our projects are smaller in size. We accepted 42 people up to now, and 29 of them are from Syria and the others are from Iraq and Afghanistan. So why is the situation like this? Because this is I want to say it's a very important issue. But first of all, the language barrier is a very important issue. People coming from Syria or other countries, they are actually having problems learning Bulgarian, and unless you learn Bulgarian, it's a very difficult thing to do to have social coherence or a true integration. Also, there is a difference in religion as well. Our district is mainly composed of Orthodox people, and especially in my colleagues in other districts, other district mayors, they are not really, how can I say, they are not really interested in these problems that I try to explain, and we are happy to be doing this. We will constantly try and find new ways to have a better integration and have better ways to help these people who come to our countries. But as a European Union member, we have a kind of a process. We have housings, we don't usually, for example, have in our society in the families, not many children. They don't have many children, and Bulgarian families in our district, for example, at the maximum they would have, let's say, 3 children, and other families coming from Syria or other countries, they are usually families with 7 or 8 children. So we have to accommodate their lives by finding them a good accommodation. And we are providing trainings, education, because these people, we cannot think of not sending these children to school. They are attending the courses because they cannot be enrolled in schools because they have to learn Bulgarian at first so that they could be actually getting their education. So after they receive their cards and they are accepted as Bulgarian citizens, it's not the ID cards. It's not the permanent citizenship. But after they get this ID card, they usually don't really stay in our country. They are again using it as a transit point into other European countries. So we have a very little number of people, refugees left in our country, and most of them are going to Germany or Netherlands. They have relatives there, so they are actually trying to get to these countries. Of course, the social standards and living standards, and also the salaries, etc., they are higher in these countries. Our livelihood and our life standards and living standards are lower when you compare it to the other European Union countries. So this is the main reason why they want to use our country as a transit point and go to other European countries. Until the end of the 20th century, the countries in our region were Soviet socialist countries. So the social spendings and the local costs, they are really lower when you compare it to the other countries, other European countries. These are our main problems. So these citizens are trying to look for new opportunities, and if they find a way to go to these countries, they want to find a better place to be integrated in. I want to give an example of a family that is permanently staying in our country. For example, the father of the family found a job in IT, and the salaries in IT are usually higher in our country as well. It is almost equal, if not higher, than other European countries. And this is a very good sector that can actually provide the livelihood, the living standards that these people were aspiring to have. So this was an example. I mean, according to the area of work, they can actually achieve the same living standards in other countries too. And we try to create opportunities in, restaurants or textile factories and facilities, but this was not really appealing to a lot of the people. But I cannot help but think, if the number was higher, we only have a population of 100,000 people. So I cannot even imagine what we would do if we would get 50,000 refugees. So by saying that, I want to say how valuable the things that are done in Turkey are, because there are huge populations, huge refugee populations that are hosted very well in Turkey. So
problems are similar, and you pointed that out. And you especially pointed out to the language barrier issue. You pointed out to the cultural barrier issue. So whether it's 40 refugees or 4 million refugees, these are unfortunately common problems. And I think we're all aware in this room that, we're dwelling now on mostly the Syrian refugee issue, but all data is showing us that even darker days might arrive, with climate change, shifting of tectonic plates, which also results in natural disasters and displacement of huge numbers of people across the globe. And as you know, these platforms, panelists aren't only here to share their stories and their success stories, but we're also here to learn. So, God forbid Bulgaria sees a more difficult situation, but unfortunately the data shows that it's very much possible. So it's better to be safe than sorry and to learn these tools and to equip these tools and policies before these difficulties hits our regions and our countries. Now we're with Gordon Noble. He is the head of policy and advocacy with the institution called Australian Sustainable Finance and Initiative. I think across the panel now you've heard that economics is an important part of integrating displaced populations, and that's why I'm very curious to hear what Gordon Noble has to say, because through my research I saw that they have quite innovative financing approaches, and they not only look into the refugee communities, but they also look at the needs of the host communities. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you.
And could you have the mic on, please?
That'd be handy, wouldn't it? But firstly, thank you for the invitation. Before I provide some comments on my area of expertise, which is the finance sector, firstly to thank the hosts for the invitation. Australia is a very young country in comparison to coming to Gaziantep, a city, one of the oldest cities in the world, on the Silk Road. It really is quite humbling from our perspective to see, to come here and actually appreciate that. So I really enjoyed the tour and seeing your city. I also just quickly to talk about Australia from a migration perspective. We are a society that is built on migration. We have an indigenous population, but everyone, including my ancestors, arrived in Australia as migrants. And we're a very multicultural society. We have, I think, roughly around 400,000 Turkish people living in Australia. My son plays in the schoolyard. His best mates are Syrian, Colombian, Chilean. I think they even allow the English to play soccer with them as well. So it's a very multicultural society. That doesn't mean to say it's always easy for us in terms of migration from the political perspective, but it certainly it is part of our culture, and it's particularly the food culture we've really benefited from. But I'm not here so much to talk about that, but to talk about the finance sector. And the proposition really is, in terms of job creation, finance is critical, and it's critical as it is for refugees and migrants, as it is for business and for any part of economic life. So I've only got a fairly short period of time. There's a number of areas that we could talk about in terms of where finance could play a role. Firstly, to introduce our organisation, the Australian Sustainable Finance Initiative, which I work for. That brings together the whole of the finance sector in Australia, and we focus on how do we align the finance sector to environmental and social needs, so that we know that the finance sector can play a role, in particular in meeting some of our international agreements. My background also, I'm on a program committee in Australia for UNHCR for Australia, which is a fundraising for refugees. And over the last 20 years, I've really focused around that mobilising of capital. How do we actually use finance sector for good, if you like? So in terms of there's a couple of areas I'd like to talk about. What I was specifically going to talk about was consumer finance, but because of some of the comments, I'd like to briefly talk about the opportunity around institutional investment. I think our colleague here mentioned the opportunity for Gaziantep to become really a precinct and linked to ports, etc. Infrastructure is a very important area of institutional investment around the world, and in this regard, whilst I can talk about the finance sector from an Australian perspective, also understand that the finance sector is very networked into the UN in particular. And there's a number of initiatives that do this, the principles of responsible investment, the principles of responsible banking, and also in insurance. So when we're looking for opportunities to invest, there is these networks through the UN that we should be thinking of. And I think it's the first place to have those conversations. The Principles for Responsible Investment alone has almost 3,000 members, which all include all the major institutional banks, some of the biggest pension funds in the world, and sovereign wealth funds. So I'd put that down as in terms of being able to unlock capital, this is probably the place that you start your conversation. What I did want to talk about specifically was consumer finance. And for a refugee that comes into Australia, they access the ability to gain finance as an Australian would. And the reason is that when a bank assesses an individual for any kind of finance, they'll ask a series of questions. You know, where do you live? How long have you lived in that residence? How long have you worked in that job? And refugees invariably can't answer those questions, or can't answer them in a way that's going to satisfy the banks. So they don't get access to the best, if you don't, not when I say the best, the lowest cost finance. The alternative is that they have to access finance through higher cost providers. Sometimes that can be 25% interest rates or more. So the work that we're doing in Australia is to try to unlock finance for refugees we have to do this in a different way. We have to innovate. And so what we're looking to is, then the technical term is income contingent loans. And these are loans that basically are provided on people's capacity to pay when they can pay, not on time. An example of this is higher education in Australia, where we have a loan scheme that's existed for 30 years, and it provides Australians with the ability to go to university, including a refugee that's just come to the country, is able to access this as well. And when they have the capacity to pay as they earn, that's when they pay it off. And the interest rate is a very nominal interest rate. It's supported by the government, and it means people can access education. And that scheme has been used in around about 8 countries, and about 15 million people have accessed this kind of scheme. So we're looking at this kind of model. But what we know is that we can't use the same models. That's not going to work. So we're developing some modelling, and we're working with one of our universities to try to understand what we might do and how we might build some alternatives. And just to think, what does that mean in practical terms? So for a refugee who comes to the country and wants to access employment opportunities, the ability to be able to get purchase a car, to purchase uniforms or tools of trade, to move and be near their employment so that they can actually set up a house. All these things require finance. Without finance, we're going to limit the capacity of a refugee to integrate into an economy as the first thing. But the second thing is access to finance will provide a leverage. It'll be an economic benefit to the host nation as well. It'll stimulate the local economy. So in very, very short time, there's much more I could talk about. What we wish to do is to explore the opportunities for partnership. We know that what we do, because our system of finance is global and the rules that apply to finance are global, if we can do something in Australia, it'll apply elsewhere. But also we can learn from everywhere else as well. So what we think is there's probably a need for some mechanism that brings finance and refugees through some of the UN institutions that we have here today. And if we can do that, we can unlock a lot of job creation. That's our core argument. Thank you for the opportunity.
Right, thank you. So the main message there was we need economic integration for a sustainable integration. And for economic integration, you need innovative financial tools, mechanisms in place. And my question to you after, in the Q&A session would be, after having given out funds, which ones turned out to be the most successful in terms of return on investment? Was it the education funds you gave, real estate funds, or investment funds, and so forth? So that would be, I think, an area that we're all curious about. Now I'm reverting back to Turkish. Türkçe'ye dönüyorum. Çok değerli.
I'm going back to Turkish. We have another very valuable speaker, Ayşegül Yalçın Eriş, will take the floor. She is working as Deputy General Coordinator in ASAM. Let's hear the Turkish as well, if you would. Yes, it's Deputy General Coordinator. The speakers are discussing the Turkish equivalent. The question is similar. We would like to hear about your experience as a juridical person. As a law person, you have another know-how among your skill set. If you were to share your experience, we will be really happy. Thank you. I would like to thank this kind invitation and this very beneficial organization and all the contributors. I would like to also thank the participants to have come here to listen to us. Of course, I would like to talk about our organization's background. This SGDD association, which is called ASAM in English, was founded in Ankara. The asylum seeker name was first used by our organization. You can see the map and it shows where we are in Turkey. In dark blue, we are physically have liaison offices. In the yellow areas, we don't have liaison offices. However, we have outreach crews who are mobile crews and conduct field studies. Also, in light blue areas, we don't have liaison offices either, but the offices in the near dark colored areas support them. We have 73 offices and 45 cities where we serve. We have more than 1,700 employees working professionally in this area. I would like to also thank the partner organizations here and the institutions, beginning with UNHCR, UNICEF, UN Women, UNFPA, and so on and so forth. Of course, the European Union institutions and bodies are our partners in funding and projects. Of course, everyone mentioned the high numbers in Turkey. It is record-breaking in Turkey when you look at the recent years. The displaced people number is a record in world. We have 71 million displaced people in the whole world. When high numbers are at stake, the asylum seeker, refugee and migrant groups should be handled with sustainable solutions. This was an important subject after several years. We will not have detailed opportunity of speaking detailed, but we will talk about this goal, a result-oriented approach, and we should also put emphasis on migrations and development's close connection. Of course, there is the burden that it brings about to the host country, but there is a strong connection between migration and development, as I said. Migration receiving countries have similar experience in the past. Creating projects to ensure this development and advocate them are among our priorities as the institution. Of course, I said it's among our priorities, but at the same time, we should also talk about what we did in our offices in these years. Of course, it will take many of your time, but briefly, we can talk about the numbers from 2017 and 2018. We don't have the numbers for this year, but we will have them soon. In 2018, we have reached more than 1 million people in these offices. Our participants, and half of them were women. More than half of them were women, and it's quite a sensitivity for us. I talked about the connection between migration and development, and along with that, one of the important factors that would ensure this development was education. I am not talking about basic education, but the areas where high qualifications are required. Vocational and higher education are also objectives that should be reached. People who can access these opportunities do not only have occupations, but also they are satisfied psychosocially. They become more integrated and beneficial people to their community. They turn into people who are living for this very goal. As the... sorry, I couldn't change the slide. Can you intervene? Okay, I will go verbally here. With this objective, in our offices, we give language and vocational trainings courses. When we check the numbers, we opened 348 courses and more than 13,000 trainees we had. We had more than 300 vocational courses and more than 5,000 people got certificates from these vocational courses. I think they are relatively high and important figures. Okay, thank you. Let's skip the slide. Although these figures seem low, the area of impact is bigger. The families, the neighbors, and the surrounding areas also change with these people. As I said, more than 300,000 people had more than 13,000 people had language courses, but more people were benefited from it. We also have cooperation with private sector. Particularly on vocational courses, we identified the integrity and the identity of the courses together. We looked for the areas of need and demand, and in order to refer them to the necessary required areas, we had cooperation with private sectors. Another goal was having them working formally, getting them into formal employment. The cooperation with the employers helped us with the identification of the vacant areas. For example, in shoemaking, what kinds of skills do we need? These answers were answered by some industry people in Gaziantep. More than 80% of the participants were later formally employed. Another cooperation at this process might be with the municipalities. Directly or indirectly, our cooperation with municipalities had many contributions to this journey. The leadership that they have shown, both in public and private areas of interest, guided us in many ways. In many cities that we provided service, we were in cooperation with municipalities. We still continue doing that. Since I am short of time right now, I want to go along with speaking on another topic. In this cooperation process, we had many experiences. Building on that experience, we wanted to create a guideline on the strategy to cooperate with the municipalities. It will be published soon, but I want to show some pinpoints from it. The first one, inclusion of the refugees. The first proposition for this might be the successful governance require time. Particularly the municipality mayors and people who are eligible to take decisions should spare time in order to struggle with this crisis and create good resolutions. This is our first response to them. The second proposition might be providing service opportunities from the local municipalities. An existing organization might not know how to access the beneficiaries, but the municipalities might help them. May I use the time for Q&A as well? We can make an exception for you, a positive discrimination for a woman. You can use your time. The mobilizing of the municipalities are also important at this point. The current existing organizations might be provided with some buildings, or they might just be introduced with the respected relative related departments. Another point was inviting the donor organizations to the municipalities in order to inform them about the beneficiaries. Not only about the communication with the donors, also their direct access of communication to the donors might be important. This was a suggestion by us and many implemented actively. Creating procedures of formal employment was the fourth proposition of us. This has many subtitles. I don't want to go on talking about it too much, but the most important point here is preventing the informal employment. We had positive suggestions and we recommended them to promote formal employment, including the host community in the solutions was the last proposition. The city councils are informed by us at this topic. The NGOs, the communities, the associations might not be familiar with the city council, but individually they might be represented in the city councils. We have many different topics, but since it is also important, we should also talk about letting the organizations use the municipality facilities in their works. How can we access this document? It is not yet published, but we are in the final phase of publishing. Maybe the data that was collected from this meeting will also be in a role of guidance for us. In 2 weeks, maybe, we can publish it. It's a quite important of a resource. Thanks for your time.
Now, dear participants, we have approximately 10 minutes and I have some questions too. Before moving on to the Q&A session, I want to make a comment on something Ms. Ayşegül mentioned. Including the private sector in this process, I think it's a very crucial thing. I want to explain that we have an internationally functioning network of business people in TÜRKONFED, and there are a lot of international institutions and organizations. They are coming up with projects, but they are not really suitable for they're not really suitable for the free market and their dynamics. So we have to consider these things when we are thinking about including the private sector into this process. And there are a lot of people from the NGOs here and civil society. I want to say that we have to be more innovative and we have to find more sustainable and long-term solutions. It's not only, let's make a project for 6 months of employment opportunities for these people. This is not the way to go. I think we have to look at it in a way that this would be very destructive for this whole process. So I just wanted to make this comment, and instead of temporary solution, let's work on creating long-term solutions that would work for all of us. And let's move on with the questions. Please, I would like you to keep the questions short. My name is Gül Erdoğan. I'm from the UNFPA, and I'm working on women empowerment and economic empowerment of women especially. This is very important for me, this session. This is very in my area of interest. And thank you very much for all of your presentations. I would like to ask a question to Mr. Khaled from Syrian Businessmen Association. I don't know if businessmen include women as well, but you talked about 10,000 companies. How much is the employment rate for women in your company? As Miss Ayşegül mentioned, that there are over half of their employment is women. So I think this is a target area, the women. What do you think about it? We are attaching a lot of importance on this. We are trying to create a realm. It is not just giving the money to women and just say that okay, go and open up your own business. It is not as simple. So I think they require much more support. It's a very clear question, I think. What is the role of Syrian Businessmen Association? What can you provide for women, or if you provide anything for them? Or if you're not, can we actually do something together?
Panelistlere de sorularımız var. Evet.
شكرا لك على هذا السؤال طبعا.
Thank you very much for your question. When we say businessman, it includes men and women. Of course, the name is Businessmen Association, but it is not just men in there, and also it includes women. Us, all of our members, we never discriminate between men and women. So, of course, we have entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, and they received trainings as well. And my wife as well. I wanted to have her open a business herself, and she had been working with a lot of different other women entrepreneurs, and we are doing a lot of things. And especially women, they are really good at trade, they are really good at businesses, and they are doing a lot of trainings. We are doing a lot of trainings with women in Gaziantep, in Adana, in other cities. And as you know, a lot of financial support is required for a business, to open up a business. We have a lot of businesses now, and over 40 of the companies that we work with are working with women.
İş Adamı Derneği.
So maybe would you consider changing the name from Businessmen's Association to Business People's Association, maybe to get it more up to date with the 21st century approach? Because as you are doing a lot of work with women, there is a trend also to let's say to SIAD example. They changed the name from Businessmen Association to Business People Association. So this is more a gender neutral approach. Maybe it would be better. Other questions? I think we exaggerated the positive discrimination a little bit. Thank you very much for coming here and for your beautiful presentations. I was attracted. I was actually expecting something about sustainable livelihoods. So we never really actually touched upon that. For the past 5 years, I've been working with Syrian, Iraqi, and Afghan women, and now they are even doing their own export. And I want to ask ASAM and Mr. Haluk. Okay, then let's move on to the last question. I'm from the UNDP Istanbul Regional Office. We are working on the inclusive strategies regarding refugees. Ms. Ayşegül talked about the free market economy. And there is a certain injustice that comes with the free market approach. And there is a new approach. I think there is a need for a new business model, and we are working on it. So my question to Ms. Ayşegül is that, as a result of your field work that you do, what kind of a business model are you providing so that they could actually meet their social needs, such as language barriers and access to healthcare and every social need, in addition to these business needs or business supports? Okay, these two last questions were about sustainability and sustainable livelihood. And I would like to also talk about the financial sustainability, and I would ask our guest from Australia. Let's start with Mr. Haluk and then Ms. Ayşegül and then Mr. Gordon. We will finish with you. So, what is the sustainability approach of your work?
الذي تطرقت إليه.
Thank you very much. Yes, the sustainability is one of the most important issues that we always talk about, and we have to work on this issue all together, and there should be a coordination. In order to have a long-term or sustainable work in any area, it requires a good connection, a good bridge, a good network between the business people or the local administration and the business people in the private sector too. So there should be a really good connection, good communication. Of course, this strong bridge is what we need, I think, for sustainability to begin with. The coordination should be very strong. And at the same time, the rules of economy should be a little bit more flexible, I think, because creating the job opportunities, it is not easy. And as you can see in Turkey, almost half of the Turkey's refugee population is in the southern region. So in the southern region, for example, we should be focusing more on these regions because there is a more, let's say, population density. And we want a little bit more of a flexibility, especially regarding the work permits. In some regions, there could be some facilitation of the traveling, for example, for the refugees, because it is a big problem for a lot of the refugees. The rules around these issues, I think, should be a little bit more flexible. But we are always here. We are always here to help in order to overcome these hurdles, these problems. The biggest hurdle is, in that sense, is the getting the equivalency between diplomas from other countries and Turkey. I mean, how can we do that? I think what we need to focus on is to help these people get their equivalent diplomas, because there are a lot of, for example, Syrian doctors, but they can get their equivalency in this country, or engineers, so they don't do their jobs. They are actually not following their jobs. So the summary is that a general coordination need is apparent between different actors, and also there are some rules that need to be a little bit more flexible regarding the education and the equivalency of the diplomas, and also the traveling problems of refugees. Well, I want to summarize by saying that sustainability is one of the most important issues for us as well, of course, and not only the benefits that are given to the beneficiaries to be sustainable, but also the projects and the works that we are doing. Let me say that our attitude is that we know that the refugee population is not a homogeneous population. There are men, women. They are from different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, and they have different needs. We are very well aware of that, and we are focusing on our projects by keeping this in mind. So after the project ends, we want to have them have an access to businesses, have an access to livelihood, and we want to make this sustainable for everyone. So it is not a homogeneous population. We have to consider the differences between the population as well. But I couldn't have, of course, explained all of the things that we are doing, but we are working on sustainability, but we didn't have too much time to explain everything that we are doing. I want to make a little advertisement. UNDP and TÜRKONFED, we founded Business for Goals. We wanted to transform into circular economy instead of that vicious economy model, and we want to explain this to the private sector. And now the last answer will be coming from Mr. Garden from Australia.
Your advice for the
Sustainability is absolutely core to everything that we do in the Australian Sustainable Finance Initiative more broadly. Speaking to our UNDP colleague here, and I think there's an element here around long term, and finance and private sector is changing. It's definitely got problems, but I think if you can align it with society, sustainability is not just, it's social, it's human capital, it's climate change, it's environment. It's quite holistic, but if we don't get it right, then we're going to, the finance sector will not be able to meet society needs, but it won't be able to invest, because it's that if you get the balance wrong, that's when you start to see the explosion. So it's quite a holistic side, but it's absolutely core to what we do.
All right, so the slogan for your speech would be holistic approaches for sustainable solutions, correct?
It's a great,
very good.
I love that.
Okay, so on that note, I thank everyone for joining and listening, and very much thank you, the distinguished panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.